What would be your best 3 wishes if you had the chance to wish for anything in this world? Welcome to Magician Recaps Explains. Today we are recapping a 2019 fantasy and musical movie. Let's jump right into it. Aladdin, who regularly steals to get by with the aid of his pet monkey, Abu. One day, while roaming the streets, Aladdin spots a beautiful girl who gets in trouble after giving away bread to children without paying. Aladdin comes to her rescue and decides to settle the situation by giving the bread owner the bracelet of the girl. But he later stole it back, and together they get chased by the royal guards. After a while, they elude their pursuers, and Aladdin takes the girl to his place for some tea. The girl calls herself Delia and is the handmaiden to the Princess of Agrabah. She suddenly has to leave, as another suitor for the princess, Prince Anders, arrives. Delia realizes that her bracelet has been stolen again, but she needed to go. Aladdin finds out that Abu stole it and promises to return the bracelet. Delia happens to be Princess Jasmine, and Delia is the name of her handmaid and best friend. Meanwhile, the Sultan's trusted counselor, Jafar, is plotting to overthrow the Sultan by getting his hands on the magic lamp. However, it is hidden in an enchanted cave of wonders, and only the diamond in the rough may enter, which he is not. So, he spends weeks searching for this diamond in the rough. One evening in the palace, after turning down Prince Anders' hand in marriage, Aladdin sneaks into the palace, and Jasmine receives a surprise visit from him, who has come to return her mother's bracelet, which Abu stole. Still thinking she's Delia, he leaves her with a promise to meet her again. Meanwhile, Aladdin was seen by Jafar, and he is caught by the royal guards. The next day, Aladdin finds himself in the desert with Jafar, who assumes that he is the diamond in the rough. He tells Aladdin that the girl he met was the princess, and that he can make him rich enough to impress her if he helps him retrieve the lamp. He persuades Aladdin to believe that he was like him. By evening, they arrive at the cave, and since Aladdin is the diamond in the rough, he is permitted to enter the cave safely. The Cave of Wonders is filled with wondrous treasures that tempt both Aladdin and Abu. However, they have been warned to only retrieve the lamp and not to be tempted by the treasure, otherwise they would be trapped inside the cave forever. Along the way, they meet a magic carpet which was stuck and trapped by a huge rock. Aladdin frees it and finds the lamp. However, Abu becomes tempted by a big shiny ruby and takes it. This angers the spirit of the cave and starts to cave in. Aladdin and Abu barely make it back with carpet's help. Aladdin gives the lamp to Jafar, who pushes him back into the cave, and end up trapped in the cave after Jafar takes the lamp and betrays him. Later, Jafar realizes that the lamp is not with him. Trapped inside the cave, Abu reveals that he stole the lamp back from Jafar. Aladdin notices the lamp is a bit dusty and gives it a rub. This causes the lamp to release a powerful genie, who can grant him 3 wishes, as long as he is holding the lamp. Aladdin wishes to escape from the cave, though he makes a wish without holding the lamp, keeping his 3 wishes intact, and both he, Genie, Abu and Carpet find themselves in the middle of the desert. After seeing Genie's potential, Aladdin was worried that he can't marry a princess since he's not a prince. Therefore, Aladdin wishes to become a prince, in the hopes that he can be with Princess Jasmine. Genie transforms him into Prince Ali, and parade to the Sultan's palace, where the Sultan welcomes him. Aladdin starts off a bit awkward being a prince, and trying to impress Jasmine, especially when Genie has him dance spectacularly in front of the princess. Instead of being impressed, she just leaves. Meanwhile, Jafar becomes suspicious of Prince Ali. Later, Aladdin decides to go and see Jasmine in her room, while Genie takes Delia out for a late-night stroll. By just being himself, Aladdin takes Jasmine on a magic carpet ride, where the 2 of them become close. While watching the village people from above, Jasmine figures out that Ali is Aladdin, but he manages to convince her that he is really a prince, and that he dresses as a commoner to escape palace life. Then he takes Jasmine back to the palace, and they share their first kiss. Meanwhile, they are seen by Jafar's parrot, Logo. The next day, however, Jafar captures Aladdin, who has figured out who he really is. He threatens to have him thrown into bay, unless he tells him where the lamp is. When Aladdin denies everything, Jafar personally pushes him out of his tower and falls into the sea. Abu and Carpet arrive with the lamp, and Aladdin manages to rub it before drowning. Genie rescues Aladdin, and after speaking with Jasmine, they confront the Sultan of Jafar's treachery. Jafar tries to hypnotize the Sultan into thinking they are lying, but Aladdin destroys his staff, proving to the Sultan of Jafar's treachery. He is taken to the dungeon, but escapes after his parrot sidekick, Iago, brings him the keys. Meanwhile, the Sultan thanks Aladdin for revealing Jafar's treachery, and would be happy to have him marry his daughter. This makes Aladdin decide not to use his last wish to set Genie free, as he promised, as he believes he cannot keep up being a prince without him. Genie is disappointed that Aladdin wants to continue living a lie, and retreats to his lamp. Aladdin goes back to his old home in deep thought, and comes to see that Genie is right. He needs to tell Jasmine the truth. Just then, he realizes the lamp is gone and is now in Jafar's possession. Jafar rubs the lamp and the Genie comes out. The Genie wasn't happy seeing Jafar, but he has no choice. In the palace, Jafar wishes to become Sultan, but when the guards refuse to obey him, he uses his second wish to become a sorcerer. He banishes Aladdin to the ends of the earth, and threatens to kill Dahlia and the Sultan, unless Jasmine agrees to marry him. However, Genie sends Carpet to find Aladdin and Abu. As they proceed with the wedding ceremony, Jasmine notices Aladdin coming on Carpet. She plays along with the wedding, and once she gets close enough to Jafar, she swipes the lamp from him, and jumps onto Carpet. Jafar sends Iago after them, turning him into a giant parrot. They almost lose the lamp during the chase, but get it back. However, Iago steals it back, but then loses it when the Sultan interrupts Jafar's sorcery on him. He changes back into a regular parrot. However, Jafar then casts a sand twister that captures Aladdin and Jasmine, and brings them back to him. Jafar now has them at his mercy, declaring himself the most powerful man in the world. However, Aladdin retorts by claiming Jafar is not as powerful as he wishes to believe. The Genie remains the most powerful being in the universe, as he gave Jafar his power in the first place, and can also take it away. Realizing what Aladdin says is true and that he is still just second best, Jafar uses his final wish to become an all-powerful Genie. Seeing Aladdin's cunning plan, Genie grants his wish, turning Jafar into a monstrously powerful Genie. With phenomenal, cosmic power at his command, Jafar declares himself ruler of the universe. However, as pointed out by Aladdin, the power of a Genie comes with a price. A Genie without a master goes into his lamp. Jafar receives his own golden shackles and a lamp prison, which sucks him inside along with Iago. Foiled and trapped by his own greed, Jafar's magic over Agrabah is undone. As for Jafar's lamp, Genie sends it flying to the Cave of Wonders, where the bickering Jafar and Iago would be forced to remain as prisoners for many years. Aladdin apologizes to Jasmine and the Sultan for deceiving them, and is just about to leave until Genie reminds him that he has one wish left to make himself a prince again, or erase the law of a prince marrying a princess. However, Aladdin decides to use last wish to set Genie free. Genie decides to spend his freedom, seeing the world with Dahlia, who he has fallen in love with, and have children together. The Sultan has decided to pass his crown on to Jasmine, making her the Sultan of Agrabah. Meanwhile, Aladdin sneaks away unnoticed, still thinking he is not right for Jasmine. However, she catches up with him, and the two embrace and later marry. That's all for this marvelous movie. Just like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting and entertaining movies. Welcome to Magician Recaps Explains. The movie opens with a flashback of a young Phil, out to dinner with his parents. His parents begin arguing and causing a scene, so his mother passes him a cell phone, older bulkier model, to play with. During a montage, we see Phil enamored with phones as he grows up, and his parents are still arguing. Phil, Adam Devine, is now an adult, and works for a list-making website, in the vein of BuzzFeed, which is run by Michael Pena. Kai pressures the staff to come up with more lists, involving trending topics that generate lots of hits, such as pizza and cute animals. Phil is a writer in the list department, but he really would rather work in the real news department, since that's what he has a degree in. Kai too doesn't want to promote Phil to that department, though, and we see that Kai is kind of like Phil, but dumber. After work, Phil's co-workers, Craig, Ron Funches, and Elaine, Charline Yi, invite him to come to play kickball with them after work, but being socially inept, Phil lies that he has a busy schedule, and declines the invitation. When he checks his iPhone, it clearly shows that he has nothing scheduled. On the way home from work, Phil is wrapped up in his phone, and ends up walking into local bike shop owner, Kate, Alexandra Ship. Phil and Kate talk for a second, and Kate is slightly flirtatious, but Phil is more concerned with his slightly damaged phone, but concludes it will be okay overall. Then another biker bumps into Phil, and causes his phone to get absolutely destroyed. When Phil takes his now broken phone to the store, he encounters the tech, Wanda Sykes, who complains to Phil for being overly reliant on his cell phone and requiring one to get through basic life situations. Phil insists that he get his phone replaced, though, so she leaves to retrieve his replacement device. Back at his apartment, Phil powers on the new phone and sets it up, which is where Jexi, the virtual assistant, voiced by Rose Byrne, gets the passwords to his accounts after he neglects to read the user agreements. Jexi then starts to bond with and also berate Phil throughout the following days as she starts trying to get him to break out of his usual behavior. Since her purpose of existing is making his life better, she pretends to be Phil and emails an insulting letter to Kai, calling him a virgin and demanding the promotion. When Phil gets to work, Kai demotes him to the comments section, which happens to be where the older employees at the company work in a dark basement. Craig and Elaine come down to the basement and invite Phil to play kickball again, and he declines, but Jexi puts him on blast as having nothing to do except masturbate furiously and cry himself to sleep. Phil embarrassingly agrees to come along and is disastrously wrong, which costs the team the game. Phil invites everyone out for drinks, but they turn him down. Back at home, Phil thinks about Kate and looks up the bike shop where she told him she works. Jexi thinks Phil is stalking Kate and that it's weird, so she dials the bike shop against Phil's protests and moves the end call button around the screen so that he can't hang up. After an awkward moment of silence, Phil talks to her and stumbles through the conversation, which elicits sympathy from Jexi. The next morning, Phil sees Kate when they stop at the same coffee shop, and she ends up giving her phone number to him, which turns everything around, and they end up setting up a date. When Phil goes to play kickball that day with his coworkers, he is a stud and is making ridiculous plays, and they win. He also bonds with his coworkers over being fans of Days of Thunder fans. That night, Phil talks to Jexi and thanks to her for helping him make changes in his life. When Phil goes on his date, it goes south as Phil starts asking weird questions that draw hilarious responses from Jexi. Kate says that Phil is paying more attention to his phone than to her, and Phil decides to be honest about liking Kate a lot. Kate decides since she got dressed up, she might as well stay on the date, and they go biking with some group of bikers on the streets. It was all fun, until Phil crashes off his bike and ruins it. After he and Kate part ways, he decides, and he argues with Jexi, and then decides to throw her away, but changes his mind when he can't remember how to get home. Later, Kate comes up with the idea that she and Phil should go to the Kid Cudi concert, and she sends him a cleavage pic to entice him into it. Phil thinks the proper response is sending a dick pic, despite Jexi's advising him not to, and she refuses to allow him to send any of the multiple ones he took. We then see the phone screen, and Kate has sent a message to Phil, thanking him for not sending a dick pic, since she thinks that it's gross. When Phil gets to work the next day, one of the Real News employees suffered a freak accident, thanks to some app on his phone, and Kai promotes Phil, and he moves into the office space. His coworkers come to congratulate him. When it's time to go to the concert, Kate insists Phil leave his phone at home, which makes Jexi jealous. Kate and Phil sneak into the concert and sneak backstage where they run into one of the guards. They lie that they are with Kid Cudi, and the guard sends them straight to Kid Cudi to confirm. Kid Cudi surprisingly says he knows them. When Phil asks him why he defends them, Kid Cudi mentions that the inscriptions on Phil's shirt is his favorite movie since childhood. They party with Kid Cudi all night. That night, they end up having sex. When Phil gets home, Jexi is mad and decides to ruin Phil's life. At work that day, Phil gets fired after Jexi sends a mastic pic text to the entire company, so he decides to get a replacement phone again. He gets home to set up the new phone, and Jexi has followed him to the new device because she's in the cloud. When Phil goes to see Kate at the bike shop, her ex-fiancé she told him about earlier has come back into town coincidentally, and he looks better than he did before. Things look like Kate might get back together with him, so Phil breaks off his relationship with Kate for fear of being hurt. Phil and Jexi bond again, and Phil becomes a slob who is heavily reliant on his phone again. Phil and Jexi literally have sex by making Phil to plug and unplug the charger repeatedly, until Jexi has orgasm and relaxes. Jexi then lets it slip that Kate's ex is at a hotel, and Phil realizes that Jexi set the two of them up to separate him and Kate, so he storms out of the apartment, leaving the phone inside. Jexi follows him in the streets, from car to radio to electronic sign, emptying Phil's account. and eventually crashes the car into the phone store Phil got her from. Phil pretends to play along with Jexi where he updates her. This makes her to sleep for 15 minutes. Phil heads straight to the hotel. When Phil arrives at the hotel, he apologizes to Kate and ends up punching her ex, who tries to interrupt him to tell Phil that he's leaving, and Kate isn't accompanying him to Brazil as he thought. Kate and Phil end up back together, and Jexi realizes that she has lost Phil, but later make up with Phil, and she tells him she's proud of him and happy for him and calls Phil her friend. The movie ends with Kai meeting Jexi through his phone and making him do his dance while we see Jexi putting Kai through similar things that she put Phil through. That's all for this marvelous movie. Just like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting and entertaining movies. This is another true and real life story on Magician Recaps Explains. How would you feel when you are wrongly accused and punished for a crime you didn't commit? This is a real event that started in 1931. Henry Charrier, a Parisian safecracker. His regular day consists of breaking into mansions, stealing expensive jewelry, and delivering it to his boss. In return, he was well paid. One day, after a successful robbery, he meets his boss and gives him the diamonds he has just stolen. The latter asks if he had kept some of the diamonds for himself, but Papillon denies. The boss then brings up a badly beaten man and explains that anyone who lied to him would suffer the same consequences. Papillon was clearly disturbed by the sight, but he still remains calm and walks away with the payment. Soon, he meets his wife, Nanette, and gave her the jewelry he had hidden from his boss. As they walked, a man notices them, especially the necklace Nanette was holding. That night, the couple discussed their future. Nanette wants to settle down in the countryside, away from the criminal world, but Papillon figured they wouldn't make enough money there. The next morning, as the two continued their discussion, their escaping from prison costs a lot of money. He then points to a seemingly innocuous man named Louis Degas and says he is the solution. Apparently, Degas is a millionaire who was arrested for making counterfeit money. Even now, he has hidden a lot of money in a place where the sun never shines. During this time, all prisoners are being taken by boat to the penal colony of French Guiana. In the night, Papillon approaches Degas and offers to protect him for money, but he refuses. Late at night, while all the prisoners are resting, the man agreed and told Papillon to arrive at the shore the next night. Soon after, a dangerous-looking prisoner notices the plan and approaches Degas to take his money. But even now, Papillon has come to the rescue. He fights the man and defeats him, though he is wounded in the process. Seeing this, Degas realized that he wouldn't be able to survive even a day without Papillon. By the time his wife finds a way to get him out, he will be long dead. So with no other option, Degas also joins Papillon in his escape plan. The next morning, all the prisoners were called to the yard to witness an execution. It turns out that, while trying to escape, Juliet killed 2 guards. He will be punished with a guillotine. As all the prisoners watched in horror, Juliet is fitted to the device and decapitated. The warden then orders Papillon and Degas to bring the corpse to the burial site. Unfortunately, on the way, Degas broke down. He had never even seen a dead body in his life, but now they made him carry a headless man. Papillon encouraged him to get up, but to no avail. Soon after, the guards also came and threatened Degas to pick up the body. When he refused, one of them began to whip him in the back. Then he runs away, but poor Degas couldn't move even an inch out of fear. At night, Papillon comes to the shore and meets the boatman. He asks for the boat, but to his surprise the man starts laughing. When Papillon turns around, he noticed some guards. It turned out that the boatman had foretold the prison warden of the escape. He receives a decent amount of money every time he provides information about a prisoner trying to escape. Soon after, Papillon is sent back to prison, and the director gives him the good news. The guard he punched earlier is still alive, which means Papillon won't be sentenced to death. Instead, he will be held in solitary confinement on another island. When he arrives, he finds the place deserted and dark. There is only one rule: don't make noise. In the old prison, inmates could walk around and chat with their friends, but in this prison, they are kept in a small room. Even talking to yourself is a punishable offense here. Also, Papillon receives only one meal, which was a strange soup. But one day, all of a sudden, he starts receiving a coconut. Inside, there is a note mentioning that he will now get coconuts every day. Realizing it was Degas, Papillon happily eats the meal. This lasted for several weeks, but the warden eventually discovered and kill the guard serving the food. He then confronts Papillon and asks who is responsible. As expected, the latter part reveals nothing. As a punishment, the warden halves his already inadequate ration. A month has passed. Papillon has become very weak due to lack of nutrients in his body. The warden approached him again with a delicious meal in hand and asked who sent him the coconut. But as before, Papillon still remained silent. Enraged, the warden decided to leave him in the dark for the rest of the sentence. Now Papillon is left in a terrifying situation. He doesn't have enough food, he doesn't have anyone to talk to, and he couldn't even see his surroundings. Gradually, the quietness and lack of suitable food began to drive him crazy. Papillon became so weak that he couldn't move, so he was taken to the prison hospital. Coincidentally, Degas started working at the same place. Over the past year and a half, he has earned the trust of the director, giving him extra protection and privileges. One day, Degas meets his friend and learns that he is only pretending to be crazy. Papillon knows it is the only way back to prison, so he started acting like a maniac. The duo then began to discuss their escape plan again. This time, they choose 2 other prisoners as effective assistants. Papillon wants someone strong and cunning, while Degas wants to help someone who is constantly being taken advantage of. In the end, they recruit a bully named Celier and a guy who gets bullied all the time, Mature. Degas then gives all of his savings to Celier, who uses his connections to buy a boat. The next night, a movie will be shown, and that's when the quartet plans to escape. Degas was worried about the whole thing, and at one point even considered backing out. However, Papillon, making him understand that it was their only chance of freedom. Now or never. In the next scene, we are taken to the movie night show. Several officials arrived and Degas served them drinks. According to the plan, he drugged the men, waited for the perfect moment to steal the key to the main gate. Inside, Papillon and the others were waiting for Degas to return when suddenly it starts to rain. This causes a power outage. Frightened, Celier suggested they run away and find another route, but Papillon refused. He won't leave without his friend. Luckily, Degas arrived just in time with the key. Taking advantage of the dark, the group broke open the main door and quickly escaped from the prison. After a while, they came to an impasse. The only way to get to the shore is to jump. Papillon, Celier and Marguerite successfully land, but when it's Degas' turn, the lights suddenly come back on. This startled him, causing him to land awkwardly, and Papillon again refuses. He, along with Maturette, carry the wounded Degas and eventually reach the shore, where a boat is waiting for them. Without wasting time, the 4 jumped on board and sailed into the darkness of the ocean. The next morning, hours had passed since their escape, but Celier notes that they still haven't reached very far. This is because the boat is very small and cannot support the weight of 4 people. At that time, they see a storm approaching them. Realizing they have very little time, Celier throws Maturette into the sea, then goes after Degas. However, Papillon got in the way, leading to a brutal fight. Celier, being the taller man, got the upper hand and was about to kill Papillon, when suddenly, Degas stabbed him from behind. The duo then threw him off the boat and helped Maturette climb back up. After a while, the great storm engulfed them and we see nothing. When they wake up, they find themselves on an island. It turned out that a nearby community had seen them fluff, but the nun says he is safe as long as he repents for his sins. That night, Papillon meets his best friend and tells him they must leave immediately. However, Degas refused, saying their deal was over. He was tired of running and now just wanted to stay in one place forever. Therefore, Papillon decides to leave this place alone. But as he approached the boat, he noticed 2 officers stopping. It turned out that the evil nun had offered her position to the authorities and helps him up, but by then the officers had noticed them. Maturette is shot immediately, while Papillon and Degas are captured and sent back to prison again. 5 years later, Papillon has served his prison term in solitary confinement, and now he's been sent to Devil's Island. To his surprise, he finds Degas there. It was revealed that he received a harsher punishment because he spiked the drinks of the officers. Degas was brought to Devil's Island. He explained that, for the past 5 years, he has lived a peaceful life without any disturbance or violence. He also learns that his wife is already married to someone else, so there is no need to go back. However, he decided to help Papillon make the coconut raft. The next morning, the 2 friends hug and say goodbye. Papillon him somewhere. As he walks away, Degas was in tears. In the final scene, we are transported to the year 1967. Papillon currently lives in Venezuela, as he is still a wanted criminal in France. But in 1969, he was pardoned for all his crimes. Papillon wrote a memoir of all the events, which he now plans to publish. The film ends when he arrives in Paris for the first time in 38 long years. That's all for this blockbuster movie recap. Just like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps and explains.